Good morning, everybody. This is Uncle Harry for another Sunday video.
What are you doing? What are you doing? This is mine. Get out of here.
Yes, sir.
Brian Little.
Japan.
Hey everyone, Pastor Robbie, I'm back for another Sunday video. You know, I'm not going to lie to you, I kind of forgot how much work goes into making all these videos. You give me a few weeks off so that we can get used to home life and just kind of, you know, wow, like Sundays really catch up on you. We have been on an adventure since I last posted a video, you know, in the wee hours of the morning on Wednesday, October 21st. Ashley woke me up. She let me know, you know, that it was time to head to the hospital. And it feels like that was the last time I got a good night's sleep. You know, by lunchtime that day, little Killian was with us. And like, I don't know, what an emotional roller coaster it's been for us. You know, if you've been following along, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Meeting him for the first time, watching him take that first, you know, deep breath and first cry, seeing him in Ashley's arms for the first time. I mean, they're just like the highest of high moments. But then we've had some, you know, tough times as well, you know, and I'm working on a full video about, you know, like the emotional journey that we've been on just to see him, brought about to full health and just to be able for him to come home. You know, when we had to go home that first night, and leave him in the NICU, you know, like one of the, maybe the lowest moments for Ashley and I as parents, you know, it was hard. We're filled with fear. We're filled with doubt, you know, at that point that like this precious little life that we already loved so much, you know, might have difficulties through life. But he is now at this point with us, here in the house, you know, and so kind of like daily we're trying to figure out what life looks like as a family with 3 kids who are all under the age of 7 years old. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes, you know, we're a little bit rough around the edges. Well, anyways, this is a Sunday video, you know, so I won't go on and on about all the baby stuff. You'll see plenty of videos about stuff like that. We've been off of our regular rhythm for, I don't know, the last few weeks, right? And we've been turning it over to a few of our Nazarene brethren around the country. I'm particularly thankful for Michael Palmer, you know, for being, you know, I don't know, just an even-handed resource for us at the blink of an eye. But I want to turn it over today to a special reader for today's passage. We kind of planned a few weeks ahead, and I've got Uncle Harry back to read scripture for us again. So take it away, Harry.
Okay, good morning, CNAS family. This is Uncle Harry. I hope everything's well with you. And this morning's scripture reading will be taken from Judges chapter 4, 1 through 7. After Ehud died, the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, the king of the Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Syria, who lived in Harosheth, Hegoyim, because he had 900 iron chariots and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to the Lord for help. Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Leptodoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramon and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites came to her to have their dispute decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abilam from Kadesh, Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead the way to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sierra, the commander of Jamin's army, with his chariots and his troops in the Kadesh River, and give him into your hands. God bless the reading of his word.
Awesome. Thanks, Harry, there. It's just a really big help when there's scripture being read right in the middle of these videos, and like Harry wanted me to remind you all that if he can figure out a way to be a scripture reader in the middle of COVID times, so can you. I'll put a link in the description, in the comment section down below for anyone who wants to help with the scripture reading in a future video. Harry read for us a small portion of a broader passage of scripture. And in it, we see a portion of what we would call like the cyclical nature of God's relationship with the people being enacted. It shouldn't come as any surprise at all at this point in like our study of scripture that there's always like this rhythm between God and the people of God that goes something like this, right? Like first they, receive identity, identity received, faithful obedience into that identity, but then like the slow falling away leading to an abject failure of obedience. Then when that happens, there's like the threat of judgment, and sometimes a judgment gets carried out, but in the end, redemption is always meted out on the people. Like they are made whole again. We see this pattern happen clearly, like in a lot of books of the Bible, especially like the book of Revelation. We see it there. We see it in most of the prophetic works of the Old Testament. And we see it here in the book of Judges as well. To be honest, it feels like the daily and the weekly rhythms of our lives in our household right now. COVID is putting a lot of things on families these days, and it feels like each week we get this opportunity to, start anew, right? Take a deep breath, think of our goals, then we take that first step into the week and hope for the best. And with Tegan being in first grade and Sawyer in preschool, every morning is filled with potential hurdles that we know that we have to navigate. And if I'm honest, usually, I don't know, like we trip right out of the gates. Sometimes it's just logging into classes for Tegan at 9:30, and we're already yelling at each other in the house. As we get further into the week, our good intentions start to feel like failures, and as the, failures, and I do like air quotes for failures because it's probably just frustrations that are compounded on us until they feel like failures, right? Until those failures start to build on top of one another, we start to look at the end of the week as a hopeful reprieve from the continued onslaught of our struggles. But instead of ending in punishment, it's like we think of these cycles, there's a punishment there. Instead of ending in punishment, each Saturday, Ashley wakes up, she starts the day off with pancakes, and just like between you and me, that's a good way to break away from a very tough week, is having some pancakes. We use the weekend, to forgive one another, I think, to allow one another to take breaks some. I work a little bit, but like Ashley gets a chance to take a little bit of a break, take some naps during the day. And in the end, we just we get to gear ourselves up for the next week, right? So it's our own cycle of failure to redemption that happens. Now, in the passage that Harry read for us, we get a short glimpse, a brief glimpse at the people. They've failed, so we know where they are in the process of this cycle, right? And they're experiencing slavery again for their failure, but it's not like the 400 years of slavery, right? Like they cry out, and the Lord is already working on redemption in the form of the judge named Deborah. Right? And Deborah, that's right. Like this is a story that even though it's in the middle of patriarchal times, it's the story of a woman who was a prominent leader. People came to her to resolve conflicts. And when the people cried out to the Lord, it was Deborah who heard the word of the Lord. Now, in this passage, the selected verses that we've got, we don't get much further than her just kind of like talking to Barack. And before anybody gets triggered, right, Deborah's not talking to the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama. Barack was another person in her time, right, a contemporary of hers who was, just a revered person and a leader. But in the end of this story, right, the broader story here, it's not really Barack and it's not really Deborah who are the heroes of this story, as much as it's a woman named Jael, something like that. Who, like, just quick spoiler alert, like at the end of the story, she drives a tent stake through the temple of the general who was imprisoning the Israelites for the king of the land. Crazy story, right? But in the end of that, right, like, cycle gets completed, identity is restored, right? And we remind ourselves the Bible's kind of gruesome in the process, but the people can move ahead in obedience again. These passages in the book of Judges, they serve to remind us that the Lord's continually good to us. If you remember how we went through the book of Exodus, almost every story is a story about identity being presented to the people for the first time, or it was like identity being firmly established. However, just because that identity is given, even if it's received and even if it's rooted deeply, right? Like, it's not a given that we'll just always live in perfect obedience to that identity. These cycles that we read about in Scripture, they remind us that we're not destined for the judgment heap when we fail. They are reminders that even at our lowest moments and our hardest times, right, the Lord is making a way for us to experience redemption again. The voice of the Father, right, always speaking to us. Our identity is always being revealed to us. We're always able to receive grace again and again and again. So the next time you hear someone say, death is the consequences of sin, I just, you remind them that grace abounds even more. I'm going to leave it at that for this one, right? Like I said, 3 kids, no joke, man. It's no joke. Like, how crazy is this? Like, we're only a couple weeks away from the season of Advent, which means that at that point, we're only 4 weeks away from Christmas, and just, like, what a crazy year this has been. Just what an absolutely crazy year. But in the midst of all of the craziness that we have right now, don't forget this. I love you. I miss you. And I'll talk to you in the next one.